The future of copper mining in Arizona.
When you're looking for a mine, you've got to find the mineralization first. You can't go out and plant a seed and get a mine.
And as it turns out, one of the world's richest copper ore bodies is right here in Arizona.
Part of what we did in sinking that shaft was to prove, number one, we could go that deep, prove we could do it safely, that we could sustain a work environment and the ground pressures would hold up.
More than a mile into the Earth's surface, this is Arizona Week. Hello and thanks for joining us. Copper mining is a rich part of Arizona's history and it could soon be a part of its future. Here's a rare look inside the Resolution Copper Mining Project near the town of Superior.
This is one of the best undeveloped resources in the world. A little bit of history of the Superior Mining District. Mining commenced in the Superior District in 1870 with silver mining. In 1890 copper mining started in the district, and in 1910 the Magma copper mine commenced operation. Magma continued mining all the way through until 1996. Almost a 90-year mine life, which is a significant mine life. Magma mined veins of copper down to a depth of about 4,500 feet. In the late 90s, the copper veins were exhausted down to that depth. However, there were some magma geologists that had an inkling that there was a much larger porphyry deposit down deeper, and that led to the exploration drilling and has led to the now 100 holes that we've got in the porphyry deposit and the knowledge that there's a 40-year mine life. We've got a very, very large resource, about 1.9 billion tonnes, 1.5% copper grade. One of the features here that we often compare the size of that resource to is the Picket Post Mountain. Resolution resource is one of the best resources that's undeveloped in the world. And we're expecting it'll result in about 40 years of sustainable mining. Each day we'll be sending about 120,000 tonnes of ore from the mine through to the processing plant. So the land exchange, which is required for the development of the project, was part of a piece of federal legislation for almost 10 years. And over the course of the last 10 years, the bill sponsors and committees have been able to listen very carefully, and including ourselves have been able to listen very carefully to the concerns of Native American tribes. Fortunately, prior to final passage of the legislation in 2014, the bill sponsors and the various committees in the House and on the Senate side were able to respond to a number of the concerns of Native American tribes. And in particular, there was a concern about ongoing access to Oak Flat. There's a provision in the legislation that provides for ongoing access to Oak Flat. Protection of Apache Leap. There's also a provision in the legislation that provides for protection of Oak Flat. Heightened level of consultation will be provided as we progress through the permitting period. So a number of the concerns that had been raised, fortunately, were addressed prior to final passage. We're underground in the Never Sweat tunnel that was built in 1969 to facilitate mining from the historical Magma copper mine. We're very fortunate here in that the underground environment has very competent rock, and a tunnel boring machine was used to develop this particular tunnel, the first tunnel boring machine used in Arizona. It's a railway system, and we're using it at the moment, and we have been using it to extract material from underground as we built number 10 shaft.
We were doing pretty good until we hit the water. And then we had to start, finding ways to manage the water that didn't interrupt our sinking cycles. Before we knew it, the heat associated with the water became another obstacle we had to overcome. So we actually ended up shutting down the whole process for a period of time until we were able to upgrade the cooling facility here on surface to get enough cool air down to the bottom to support future operations. At those depths, you encounter different stresses, and the heat load down there gets to be pretty unbearable at times if you don't have proper ventilation.
We finished sinking last year is the deepest single lift shaft in the US. We're in the process of permitting a modern mine, and water is a great example. As part of our mine plan of operations, we've committed to not drawing water from the local water sources, and we've committed to using renewable water sources for the development of the mine. We've invested in a significant amount of water for future use, and in fact we've secured 65% of the project's future water needs, and we expect to be able to obtain the remainder, the balance of those water needs over the course of the permitting time horizon.
I mean, you can just tell that this is just going to be a mine driven on technology and innovation.
Developing a project like Resolution is an expensive exercise. So far we've invested over $1 billion with the development so far. Before we get to the end of the permitting process, we will have invested another $1 billion, and we're looking at a $6+ billion investment for the initial construction phase. So the mine plan of operations has been deemed complete. It was deemed complete by the US Forest Service last year. This week we're expecting a notice of intent to be published in the Federal Register, which indicates that we're commencing the NEPA process. We're expecting the NEPA process to take many years and culminate in a record of decision which will allow us to commence commercial mining. We estimate about 5 years, 5.5 years from commencement of NEPA through to the record of decision. The Resolution copper mine will be pioneering new ground in terms of the level of automation that we're using in our underground environment, the level of automation and innovation that we're using across the project. So absolutely it'll be a world-class mining operation right here in Superior. Well, a mine like the Resolution copper mine presents a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to produce copper in the US, to be able to put that copper into the US manufacturing industry, and to invest in some wonderful clean energy and clean technology projects in the US. And I think we can all see examples each day of where copper is adding value to our lives and a greener life, with the likes of hybrid cars, with the likes of wind generators, photovoltaic cells and those types of things. So that's the opportunity that exists. We're talking about thousands of jobs. The job numbers will ramp up as we progress through the permitting period and transition into construction. We'll start to increase the levels of employment. We'll have thousands of people, over 2,000 people involved with the construction phase of the project, which will be about 4 years. And as we transition into the operational phase, we'll have 2,000, 3,000 direct and indirect jobs associated with the mine. This will be one of the largest investments in the history of the state of Arizona with the development of the Resolution copper mine, but something that we can all be extremely proud of once it's finished.
We're about 1,100 feet underground in what's known as the Never Sweat Tunnel, and we're about to go deeper, nearly 7,000 feet.
Hear that noise?
Yeah.
Those are the exhaust fans on 4,000 level, which is, not to confuse you, 4,600 feet below the surface. Where we're standing right now is about 6,800 feet underground. We're standing in a pump station that was designed to keep the shaft dewatered. A little bit of background, behind me is number 10 shaft. In November of 2014, we completed that shaft to a little over 6,900 feet. It's the deepest single lift shaft in America at the time. In order to maintain and protect that asset, we had to develop this pump station. So we're standing about a couple hundred feet above the bottom of the shaft. And we have a complex system of pumps to keep that water coming out. We have a great deal of about 500 gallons a minute of water at 170 degrees that we're pumping out. In terms of where we're at in terms of the big picture, we will support, we're doing the work to keep the operation going as we develop our next shaft.
What are these conditions like that we're in? I mean, we're underground, but it's raining.
As we sink that shaft, we hit a lot of water. We're relatively dry compared to the conditions that we had to work in when we developed that. So it's natural groundwater. It's part of the process of mining is to keep that water removed.
How long did it take to sink this shaft?
The first blast, collar blast, was in 2008, so it took almost 6 years to sink that shaft. Delayed significantly by the influx of water, because we had to stop for almost a year to upgrade our cooling. We couldn't continue to work that way safely.
When this is actually started and in production, what's it going to look and feel like down here?
Where we're working right now is workable conditions, so we're in the mid 80s degree temperature. Without the artificial environment that we've created, it would be over 110 degrees down here within an hour. So we'll have conditions like this, and the challenge is engineering those conditions out, and that's what we've been able to do. Part of what we did in sinking that shaft was to prove, number one, we could go that deep, prove we could do it safely, that we could sustain a work environment, and the ground pressures would hold up.
Tell me about this engineering marvel, to sink this shaft and to say we're going to work this deep.
The deeper you go, the higher the rock stresses are. We're proving that right now. We're standing on underground support. The heat was always going to be an issue, and the water certainly turned out to be an even bigger issue, to move that amount of water just to keep so you can work. And that's all been engineered. The cooling is by far the biggest thing. Like I say, we're probably about, I'd say 85 degrees Fahrenheit right now. If everything stopped within an hour or so, we'd be over 100. It gets really tough, and that's our challenge, to keep it safe.
You guys are in the constructing, permitting phase right now. What's going on down here right now?
My group is responsible to operate and maintain these pumps. Not to get real technical, but as I mentioned, it's 500 gallons a minute of water that we have to continually move out. It doesn't give you a lot of time if something goes wrong and we lose those pumps. Where we are standing right now would be underwater in less than a day.
You started in mining some 30 years ago?
Yeah, the 38 years is a little closer to it. So I started my career underground at the original magma at this mine in 1977. And have worked around the world, around the country, have come back in a big circle to finish it up.
How is this different from back then?
There's a lot of differences. We, like a lot of industries, we've taken advantage of the technology advances. So our equipment's more high-tech. The fundamental principles are all still the same. You drill, blast, muck. We're doing it bigger, we're doing it faster with more mechanization. More important than that, the biggest change by far that I've seen is our approach to safety and the environment. It's more important part of my job than it's ever been. It's not acceptable for us to hurt people anymore, as it shouldn't be. So my most important job is take care of those guys that work for me every day, that they go home safe. It's a true priority. The difference from when I started now is that we're given all the resources, all the tools that we need to do that. And we got their guys, it takes their input too. You know, the guys, they're all trained different. When I started in the business, there was no training. They just threw you into the crew and hoped you came out okay. It was scary.
It takes a pretty unique individual with maybe a certain level of wanting some adrenaline out of that to work underground like this.
Absolutely.
What is that like?
So underground mining people, I've done it my whole life. And once you get it into your blood and you do it, there's nothing like it. It's more challenging. It's a lot of hands-on work. Even as a mining engineer, I've spent most of my career underground working with my hands. And that's very rewarding.
There's some element of danger to what you do.
Absolutely.
How do you filter through that and keep coming down here every day?
I mentioned about resources and tools. We have a process where we basically look at the risk of everything we do, and the first thing you want to do is engineer those hazards out, make sure it's safe. And so that's been a challenge. To me, I've never been afraid to work underground, ever, even in the old days.
It's almost a shame not to try and tap this ore body, isn't it?
It provided a life for 50 years. I grew up in that town, company hospital, wonderful way of life. Comparing that, this ore body is at least that of a duration we're going to produce at twice the rate and at least twice the grade. I mean, there's not another ore body like it in this country I know of. It's jobs for people, and particularly in underground, it's people that have a lot of pride in what they do. They want to come to work.
It's long been said mining is dangerous but necessary work. Here's State Mine Inspector Joe Hart.
It's awesome to see what they've done. This mine was supposed to have been dead 50 years ago. Through the technology you've seen here today, it's going to be the #1 producer in Arizona pretty soon.
Are you amazed by the engineering of it, the safety of it? What impresses you the most?
All facets, everything they've done properly. From the gallus frame up above to the water control. I mean, how did you ever figure out you were going to be 2.5 miles underground in a rainstorm and interviewing somebody? Did they teach that at U of A?
You gotta figure that most people don't understand what goes on underneath here. How important is this to the state of Arizona?
Well, Arizona's #1 and sometimes #2 in production of copper. And when this mine comes back online, it's going to really help our economy. There's people that, just like myself, I came right out of high school and went to work in the mine. The mine's raised me and all my kids. I've got 4 daughters. All of them got good educations, possibility to make more money than their daddy ever did, and not one of them has a student loan thanks to the mining industry.
Joe, you said this is not your grandfather's mine. What did you mean by that?
We can mine cheaper, easy, reclaim better. Everything we can do nowadays, we do it a lot better than earlier generations. And we get sort of a bum rap for a lot of things that went on in the past. A lot of people said, well, look what mining did to this place or to that place. Well, we've got the technology now. We can reclaim anything and put it back to better than what it was.
You've been mine inspector for a long time now. You really want to see this kind of work continue.
Absolutely. I mean, this is money. You know, I've seen core samples from all over the state of Arizona, and they all look exactly the same. They're gray with black stripes and swirls. The gray is the copper and the black is the molybdenum. That's our black gold.
There's been mining activity in this community for the last 100 years, and it's changed the landscape of this area. But Resolution Copper says this project is different on many levels. Here's Environmental Manager Casey McEwen. So Casey, Resolution is not actually producing or mining copper right now, but there is some activity and there is a reclamation or environmental process to it. What exactly are you guys doing right now?
Since about 2005, we've been in the process of reclaiming the old mine site that was known as Magma Mine, also owned by BHP. And we started down the road of reclamation to make sure that we have a good environment to work in as we get started. And we also want to be able to demonstrate to the community that we are responsible neighbors, and we want to be able to make sure that they will be able to live in this community comfortably, healthy, and safe.
And you're currently reclaiming water and it's being transported to the valley, is that true?
Yeah, so right now we're working on a project that's going to be continuing as long as we have water and as long as we aren't able to use it on the site here. What we'll do is we've been treating the water at a water treatment plant, and it comes out of the old mine workings and it gets treated and then is sent to an irrigation district down by Queen Creek, the town of Queen Creek, and they're able to use that to grow crops. And that's one of the considerations we had during this process. We want to make sure that we have the highest, best use of the water, and that is considered one of our best uses, to be able to reuse that in an irrigation process.
How much water are you talking about when you say what you have used and what you will use in the future?
We pump around 1,000 gallons a minute right now out of the old mine, and that will be done for years to come. And once we're up and running and operating, we'll be able to use that in our process. Down the road, we've been considering our needs for water and have started banking water and making sure that we'll have water available to us when we need it.
So there's very little waste.
At this time, that's correct. Yeah, we want to make sure that we use the water, again, to its highest, best use. And that is going to be including the recycling of that water as we go through our mine development and our mine process. And so as we are doing actual mining and processing, we will reuse the water about 7 times.
Any of that water taken from the supply in the town of Superior?
No, that water that we are banking, it's leftover water that is available credits from the Central Arizona Project, and we've been purchasing that and banking that for years.
It sounds like Resolution is going to extreme efforts to try and conserve as much as possible. Why do that?
Well, I think that part of our philosophy of operating here is, one, we want to be a good neighbor, and that is setting a good example for how we operate in this community. And we want to be able to stand up and say that we're doing the best we can with what we have. And water is a key factor in Arizona as well as, the rest of the U.S. But realistically, we have to account for all of that. We don't want to pay for extra water, but we also don't want to waste it.
This mine could run for 40 to 50 years. And then what? You often hear people say that you pack up and you move out and you leave the town.
Mm-hmm. So, there's been a bad history of mining around the U.S. and it has occurred where companies have just up and walked away. We're not in that kind of climate now. We are in a regulated environment where we are required to plan for closure of our mining facilities. And that means from the buildings to the tailings that might be created to all of the structures that we have in place. We have to be accountable for how those are taken care of when the mine goes away. So we have to bond for them. We have to put up money for them to the government to make sure that if for some reason we walked away, the taxpayer wouldn't be left holding the bag, and they would be able to pay for the cleanup of this area.
Is there a health and safety component that people are going to, inevitably in Arizona, that's been the story, is that mining is not good for communities or families who live there. But it sounds like Resolution is going to the extra effort to be sure that it's healthy and safe for generations to come.
I think that's a lot of the planning. We've been planning for years. We've had about 10 years of planning under our belt so far, and we still have a long way to go to refine our mine plan. But top priorities are health and safety for our workers as well as our community, because we don't want to impact our community, which is ultimately our workers, and we want everybody to go home safe every night and be able to come back to work. And part of that is the laws of the U.S. require us to manage aspects of air quality, water quality, and land use. And we are held to a high account for making sure that we manage those properly.
Resolution Copper Mine is in the construction and permitting phases. What will be the process moving forward when it comes to the environment?
We have over 50 permits to get in order to start mining. Those are related to the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, Waste Management, and Safe Drinking Water Act. We have to make sure that we meet the standards that are set by our government and our community. And one thing that we're planning on doing for our future tailings impoundment, as an example, instead of waiting until 50 years has gone by to reclaim it, we will do what's called concurrent reclamation, meaning that as the tailings impoundment gets larger, we will begin to reclaim the outskirts of it as we go, so that it won't be left till the very end to do all of the work. A lot of things that we do recycle the water in a lot of our activities. That will be from when we move the concentrate of copper down a pipeline, we will recover the water and send it back to the mine to be used. In the tailings, when we slurry the material, when we move it in a pipeline to the impoundment, the water will come back to the mine so we can reuse that again and again.
Copper prices have hit a 6-year low, and in the state of Arizona, more than 1,000 miners have lost their jobs over the last few years. But Mine Inspector Joe Hart says this ore body could be a game changer in the state of Arizona. Joe, copper prices are going down. What does that mean for the state of Arizona?
It means no jobs and less money in the treasury. The mines generate about some people think it's about 30% of our budget, and I think so too. I think sometimes it's more. It all depends on, you know, all the jobs that they create and the ancillary jobs. And people seem to think that mines out in like this part of the state don't generate money to the great state of Maricopa. Well, there's probably 2 trucks a day from diesel fuel coming up here from Phoenix. There's probably 2 trucks a week coming bringing tires, and there's 2 trucks a week coming from Empire Machinery and Road Machinery, and all of those jobs in the valley get accustomed to what goes on in mines. The mine up in Baghdad's halfway between Kingman and here, and that's the same thing. Every week and then they haul the product out, take it to the smelter, and everybody gets paid.
Not everyone sees that the economic value of mining benefits the state, especially when it comes to the geography, the geology. What do you say to those people?
Well, the geography, when you look at most of the mines, they're not in a populated area. But when you're looking for a mine, you've got to find the mineralization first. You can't go out and plant a seed and get a mine. You've got to have the mineralization to go after, and you have to have the engineering and the prospecting to know that it is a good, viable project. Just like this place there, they put a lot of money into here on faith, and now they're starting to see some of the benefit, and they'll see more.
Would it be a shame, a waste, not to utilize this copper ore?
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be just a sin, even if, you know, we can produce more and cheaper than anybody in the world, and we've got more of it.
Is the irony that copper sort of affects everyone everywhere?
Well, and the irony about that is they say in the next 40 years we're going to be using probably 40 to 50 times more copper than we are right now because of the electronics and everything that they're putting in the automobiles and everything else that requires copper. Every one of your cell phones, every one of your copper's in virtually everything we touch. You touch something that's made out of copper or enforced by copper probably every 10 minutes of every day.
Copper was a part of Arizona's history. Is it a part of the future?
It is a part of the future. It's going to bring us back. It's going to be around forever. Like I said, the mines they're stable. They create lots of good jobs. There's people that, like myself, the mines raised me and all my children.
It's estimated this copper mine will be in full production within the next 10 years. From the Resolution Copper Mining Project near Superior, I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thanks for joining us.